I'm no stranger when it comes to oversleeping. I wish I could say that it was, but unfortunately that just isn't the case. I've tried loads of different hacks to help me wake up on time, but just none of them really seem to be effective. I've tried moving my alarm clock across the room, drinking water the second I wake up, and even cold showers, the last of which being my least favorite. But after all that, the only tried and true way for me to really ever wake up in the morning is to have a reason to wake up in the morning. Now, it sounds like a no-brainer, but the truth is, if I have a reason to wake up, I have no problem getting out of bed. Sometimes the only reason I need is a warm cup of coffee. But more often than not, the reason I use to trick myself out of bed, to go out on a cold, brisk morning, is photography. I just went home for Thanksgiving, and somehow the day after Thanksgiving, I was able to convince myself to get out of bed at around 6 a.m. And go out in 20-degree weather. And so lately I've been pretty enthralled by monochromatic and atmospheric photography. Todd Hido is an amazing example of someone who can photograph atmosphere and paint with the colors that he has available in front of him. And usually it's like 2 colors or so, especially when I'm talking about like his blue hour building photography. It's usually blues and rich oranges and some type of fog that really helps them blend together. And there's a lot of photographers who are really good at it. I mean, Willem is a great example of someone who does this, where there's almost this like otherworldly fantasy-like view to the images that they're putting in front of you. And so this idea of a dark, rich blue image with some hazy orange light shining through it has been on my mind a lot lately. And it's the images that I've been wanting to get. So whether it's in Brooklyn or Jersey, I know I'm going to. But this morning, unfortunately, wasn't that. Okay, good morning, internet. It's a cold winter sunrise, and I don't really know if I'm gonna have much for you. I don't have my tripod mount for my Fuji, so I'm gonna try to get a few more images that I can do handheld. So at the fastest, we'll do like a 1/60th of a second shutter speed. But yeah, make sure when you go out, you remember all of your different mounts and stuff, because they're important. Yeah. So after realizing I wouldn't be able to get the photograph that I actually had planned on going out and getting, I had 2 options. Either pack it up and go and flop on the couch, or drive around for a little bit longer and just try to chase some light. And wouldn't you know it, driving around was the better option. I didn't stray that far from my house while I was driving, so everything that I was seeing was pretty familiar. So I had an idea on like where I wanted to go and what could potentially make for a good photograph. The first thing that caught my eye was this almost cartoonishly blue barn that's a couple of minutes from my house. Personally, honestly, I sort of hate this barn. It's just such an obnoxious teal color. I don't know why anyone would paint it that color. I feel like it'd be much better if it was like a classic red. But here we are. And so maybe I don't know anything, because this morning in particular, it did catch my eye. The light was really blue, purplish almost, because the sun still hadn't quite come up yet. It was like 7:15 in the morning. And that with the bright blue barn and kind of everything melded together, I thought just made for a really nice color palette and kind of scratched my itch on getting a monochromatic image. Like, kind of. And so all of these colors just worked together. When composing this shot, I found myself stepping further and further away from the subject that I was trying to photograph, which is something I've found myself doing more often than not lately. I don't know what it is exactly, I just feel like lately I've liked to get as much context into the image as possible. And so every time I stepped back, and here's like the images I first started when I was out there, but every time I stepped back, I kept getting more and more of the fence line in the image, till eventually I feel like it really helps guide your eye through the final image that I ended up with. And so this is where I can't emphasize enough that having a process that works for you is extremely important. I like to take test images while I'm out, so I think that's why digital works for me, because I'm able to get a few images, look at it, see what it looks like in an actual frame, and start adjusting my composition from there. Now, if I was shooting on film, this would have been a different story. I don't know what if I would have taken this many photos of this scene to begin with, or maybe I just would have been way more intentional going into the first photograph and started composing manually first. But regardless, the lesson here being just take your time when you're composing and try different things and try to introduce elements to the photograph if you think it can help contextualize the photo a bit further. And so like I said, this was at like 7:15, so we're not early birds by any means. But all of 15 minutes later, the sun was in a completely different position. And thankfully, the sun started coming out, peeking out a little bit, and putting out really golden rays of light. And so I got back in the car and drove around a bit until I found a scene that I liked. And now, like I said, I'm not that far from my parents' house. So a lot of what I'm driving past, I've driven past thousands of times. And this church that I came across is no different. I've seen it a bunch of times, but I've never actually been able to photograph it with good light on it. This morning, on the other hand, that changed. Right when I was coming up the hill and to drive past it, it was just getting beamed with golden light. And so here we are, one cold morning out for an hour and a half, and we end up with two semi-usable images. Now, like I always say, are these photographs spectacular? No. But do they act as a reminder for you to get off your butt and go out and take photos, even if it's really early in the morning, or if it's cold, or you don't feel like it, just because you never know what's really gonna be waiting outside there for you, unless you go out and take photos? Yeah, they do. And they almost always do. Sometimes photography feels like work, even if it's your favorite hobby, like it happens to be mine. But I couldn't have said it better than I did that morning.
You know, it's not always the easiest figuring out what to photograph on these mornings, but we rode around and just kind of followed the light and waited for the light for a little bit, and maybe we got a thing or two. So sometimes you just gotta pretend you're having fun until you actually have fun. That's my best advice for you. That's what I got on this philosophical morning.
And so look, as always, if you made it this far, I appreciate it more than you know. If you liked it, like it, subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.